Now, to start with the session, pretty much, I'm going to be taking you a little bit on a journey, and then we're going to see how it all fits, and we're going to tie it back to where we are today, and we're going to talk about a little bit about the future. It's kind of a storytelling of mine at the beginning, right? So, why storytelling? So, this goes back to 2017, and it's a Joel Commons blog post where he was trying to say people are trying, like, having issues or finding it hard to source for Oracle Apex people, right? And then Peter Ragonich from Forex team responded why that is, right? And pretty much, I'm not going to be going into that story at all, but what I wanted to do is this resonates with how my start. So I'm taking you a bit into my past, and I'm talking about how I started as a SQL developer, right? And you'll see in a bit why that matters, right? At 2005, I got employed. It was an Oracle shop, right? I got upskilled or skilled, or I went into all the classes for Oracle, like PL SQL forms, reports, and stuff. Pretty much standard Oracle SQL developer job, right? And then eventually, with 4 or 5 years of experience, I started to ask myself, I sort of felt that I need something a little bit more than just being a SQL developer or living on that database level. And why Apex hit me on a sweet spot is exactly because it covers exactly what you can see here. Is pretty much with Apex, I was giving ability to do more exciting things, not just a database development. And some of them are listed here, and you can see, so it's not just a back-end development, but with Apex, I get to do a front-end thing, designing thing, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, things I never heard of, things I never wanted to hear for, and stuff like that. So it made, that was at that point, that was 15 years ago, and at that point, it was a scary thing to say, I'm going to be a developer of Apex in version 3.1. And at that point, it was whether or not Apex is going to live or not. But oh boy, has that changed. So I'm taking you, now we're going to the present, right? We're talking about today. So we know we live in the world of data. So I gathered around a few of the statistics, and we can see that there's so many or so much data gathered or during our normal day-to-day lives and our work lives as well, but pretty much very little is currently being used. And on the next slide, so top line here is like in 2017, and I think we all going to agree that most valuable source is not oil or gold or whatever, it's data, right? Because there's so many of it, and just because we didn't analyze it well, it just doesn't deliver still that value that we all expected it will. So here's some more statistic, right? But the point of this is like, because we gathered the data, obviously we are database guys. So data lives in a database. We need something to, like, we need to build something in order to see this data, to visualize these data. And that's why we need to build apps. And I'm going to be, you probably heard of this, data scientist is the sexiest job of 21st century. I'm not surprised that that saying is still there and that it's, I don't want to say valid, but if you look at these data statistics that we went through and some information, it's pretty much obvious, right? So much data is gathered, not so many of that is analyzed. So obviously, like, people are going to have jobs forever, right? Because we just keep piling up the data. So how does that come down to Apex? We're going to see that in a second, right? We don't have to look like around like for too long or anything. We've been hit by something called COVID, right? And good or bad experiences that I'm not going to go into details, but the point here is, even with the COVID, there was just it was clear as a day that solution needed to be built pretty much yesterday, right? Not tomorrow, not in 3 weeks, not in 3 months. We needed to have solution for that thing immediately. And by that, I mean, like, applications being developed. So where we're going with this is pretty much, in order to develop something quickly, we normally, in nowadays, we're going to be talking about the low code. And what's a low code? If I can, this is just a borrowed image I taken from Apex, regular Apex site, apex.oracle.com. And pretty much it showcases everything what low code is. It's pretty much you take a tool and you don't need to know anything about it. And you don't need to be expert on the technology or on the subject, but it needs to let you create the app. And the easier it is to create these apps, the better the low code is, or you want to write the less code. And pretty much that's where the Application Express comes out and shines, right? It's called, we can call it Application Express as the full name, or Apex that it's nowadays mostly used. And pretty much what I'm going to be telling you is something that Oracle has been sitting on it for 20 years and has been keeping it quiet for me unknown reason, and I can't understand that. But it's probably the best thing they ever done, if I can be honest and objective on it, right? And when the change happened, pretty much in 2019, you can see here Larry talking on big stage, Oracle Open World, where the word Apex is first time mentioned on an Oracle Open World, right? On a big stage, right? And what this meant is just that Oracle within has completely changed how they look and take Apex. So it wasn't anymore the backend tool. Now it started to flourish, and pretty much since 2019, it just like it's moving the speed of sound, right? This is just a brief, so for the guys who are new to Apex, brief history, as I said. So 2004 is the first version or official version, even though it was there within Oracle for a few more years or years before. But officially in 2004, it's HTML-DB, and ever since it's just been developed and growing and growing. And now these slides needs to be a little bit updated, because in 2021 we got 21.2 released, right? So it's just a outdated slide a little bit. And where does Apex or Application Express sit within this low-code world, right? It's pretty much perfectly suited for all that it needs to do. And you've seen lots of stories or heard lots of stories how Oracle implemented and used Apex to implement lots of these COVID solutions. That they have teams big as like 200 developers developing COVID solution in US, in Africa, and everywhere else. And why I wasn't surprised with it, because we all knew Apex could do it, right? And now it was just proving the point. There have been studies and white papers written about how fast it is from React.js and other frameworks. So pretty much, I would bet that nothing can beat it in terms of the speed, right? These are some numbers down there about how big is current community or in the world, and how many apps we have in organizations. So it's just a little bit statistics. Again, just to showcase that it's growing in popularity, right? And these things are just, I think they're all like they're dated 2020. They will probably be even higher into 2021, right? Now we're going a step forward. Okay, so we know we're going to be talking so data, applications, low code. We know it's Apex, so because we work with Oracle. In Oracle we have Apex, and why wouldn't we use it? So what is Apex and how does it work, right? It's pretty much it's consists of a simple architecture, right? Where you have a browser, you have something that's called Midity or Oracle REST Data Services, and then we have a database, right? And within the database, a normal Oracle database, you can have, or mostly you have, Apex installed. And Apex is nothing but some schema and some tables and some metadata that's stored in these tables, right? And pretty much there is, so that previously Apex did come with Oracle database, but nowadays, or in the latest versions like 21.c, it won't be part of database installations, right? So you can just download and install that. That's not a big deal. But the problem, the point is, after you get it installed in a database, there's no additional installation. So for me as a developer, I don't have to install any tools or any clients or anything on my computer in order to be able to work. So let's have a look instead of me just talking here. So I opened, just let me refresh the page. So for those of you folks who never seen an Apex app or never been able to log into Apex environment, this is meant for you guys just to be able to follow up the slide after. So I have something. So the first thing is going to be identifying my workspace, and then I'm going to be saying I am a user of that workspace and I want to log in. So I'm going to type it. So I'm typing in my username and credentials, and then I'm logging into Apex development environment, right? So this is it. There's nothing else. So anywhere in the world, if you want to sit in a cafe having a coffee or eating ice cream or at home or doing a home office or wherever you are, if you have internet connection and you have a browser, you can code in Apex. So, and we've been doing this for like 20 years or 15 years personally, but Apex was around for like almost 17, 18 years now, and people could have been doing this for a long time. And with the cloud and all of these new technologies, pretty much Apex was already there. That very little has changed in terms of how it looks better, it behaves fast and stuff like that. That's fine, but in its essence, it's still the same old thing that we had before, and we still have, right? So, and pretty much once I logged in here, there's many things I can go with, and SkillBuilders and Tyson, and we try to cover most of these topics during the time, so you can find lots of it on our webinar page. But for me, all I wanted to show is like pretty much if I click here on application builder, so app builder is just an application builder, and it shows list of my applications. This is where we're going to come back to, but for now, I'm just going to go back to the slides. So there's nothing more than, so touching on this logical structure, how it's all sort of built and how it all sort of connects today. It's like a box in a box. If you know that kid's toy where like little kids come in and they play, there's a box, you open it, there's another box, and then you need to make a tower out of it. It's kind of similar. So we have a workspace, and then we have apps that live in the workspace. And then I have more than one login. And why is that? Because I first have to log in into Apex development environment, and then if I am an end user, I can just directly go to the application. So there's two levels of logins, and each of these applications, of course, can have a separate way how people can log in. Is it a database account? Is it a custom table, a password thing, or is it social media authentication and stuff like that? So that's why we have these two levels. And pretty much for the people who are new, this is just conceptual to understand why we log in two times. So once we log in into workspace, and if I were to run one of the apps, I would get presented with another login screen, which we'll see in a second. So this would be an example of a login screen, right? Perfect. So how does all that fit into you now? Because 17 years ago or 15 years ago, I was just a regular Oracle developer. But why do I think it's even nowadays even more relevant? Every day, I can't explain, and I can't stress this how often this happens. Is on every conference I have colleagues, my ex or former colleagues of my current colleagues coming to me saying, I want to try doing Apex, and they're so keen and so eager, and I'll tell you why, because it's the answer is very simple. So there's a website, apex.world. It's pretty much one of 2 or 3 links that we would need to memorize or just write down if you're going to be doing Apex in the future, right? Because it's one of the major pages in Apex community. So pretty much on there, I found this image that I just divided into 2 sections, and you'll see in a second. So if you read through a little bit about these percentages, so exact percentage and the number in itself is doesn't matter, right? But the concept is pretty much told just by separation, right? And what I'm going to be saying today to you is pretty much you guys, everyone who is a SQL developer, you pretty much sitting already on 60% of it. So you already have, without ever see, you don't have to see an Apex application, you already have 60% of what it takes to be a decent Apex developer, right? So let me cut this and slice this a little bit down for you. So you use Oracle, right? I use Oracle, and I was a developer. So as a SQL or PSQL developer, we use Oracle, and we know tables, we know relationships, we know constraints, we know triggers, procedures, packages. So nothing can surprise us, right? Some of us do get these experiences with forms or ADF or reports, which is available when you join and sort of want to do Apex, right? So pretty much just where you sit now today, you're pretty much sitting with zero effort on 60%. So if I were to teach you from there where you sit, so if you're completely new to Apex, you already have 60% of, if I were to teach someone who doesn't have a clue what SQL is or PL SQL is. Huge difference. And then if you get exposed, so if someone comes in your company and says, oh, we have an Apex thing, no one has ability or no one wants to take that, or if they ask you and come to you saying, you want to try doing Apex, raise your hand, and trust me, that's going to be the best thing you've done in your career. That's coming from someone who feels like that, right? And pretty much, if you just take that exposure to projects, right, just tiny little bit of experience, you're pretty much there on 80%. And then the other 20%, or let's say this last percentage, that's, it doesn't matter what the number, like 25 or 30 or more or less, it's just from the experience. So the amount of time you put into development, of course, is going to be telling the difference between you and someone who spent like 15 years behind the screen, right? So that's obvious. And then what's worse is, it's not that you have all these profile tick checkboxes ticked, right? That you have the skills already. Like, we don't have to teach you any of it, but there's so many reasons why you should sort of try exploring this as a career path. So Apex, since I told you, like, I can't stress this enough, since 2018 and 19, there's been jobs listed on a market that's tremendous, right? There's a great prospect for the future, right? So if you're new, coming from college, or you just graduated, or you just joined the workforce, or you just change your jobs and you don't know where to go next, trust me, this would be one of the highly recommended thing you can do. How do you start? We'll see in a second. Okay, so if I'm going to summarize it, so I want to give you a picture of what expects you in the future, right? And what you are going to be learning in Apex, and what's sort of needed to be an Apex developer. So pretty much there's thing called universal theme. We'll see that in a second. And pretty much it's just mastering and having the feel of that website that we guys as PL SQL never get the experience unless we play a little bit with forms or have some HTML experience, right? And then after that, it's SQL, and I could go SQL for 50 times. It's all about SQL. And if that doesn't make you curious, I don't know what will. So I'll give it another go, right? So let me try with one of the apps. So I'm just going to be logging in here. If I can get these right. So this is one of the apps. And just bear with me. I know you don't have to know anything about the app. That's not the point. So this is just a sample database application. So someone built an application and we're exploring a little bit. So as you've seen, so I logged in into my Apex environment. I'm just gonna refresh so that it stays active in the case that it doesn't log me out. Okay, perfect. So if I was to tell you how easy it is to explore this and sort of change these things, and you'll see what it's all about. So I'm just gonna go hop on one of these. Let me do edit of this page, and you can see it's just a form that allows me to edit my records. Okay, so I'm going to quick edit this page, and let's see what hides behind that button. So this is another term that I want you to introduce. This is the environment. This is your page designer. So within each application, if I can zoom in a little bit, that would help as well. So within each application, we have something that's called a page design. It's nothing but your graphical user interface, your Apex user interface. And pretty much within here, that there's like, we can talk about this forever, but I'll try to keep it brief. So I have a button here, and I'm going to go through the properties, and then I'm going to say, oh, okay, so it's doing something. So it's going to be redirecting. Perfect. And I need to find a process that is going to run. Okay, so I have here a process. So pretty much it's a section. So there's like panels that I can sort of browse through. So this is my rendering side. So what's on my page, then I can see what's dynamic, let's say dynamic action. So what's happening when I'm clicking or interacting with the page. And then this section is like what happens when, let's say, when I need to go SQL and peel SQL or talk to the database. And then you can see here, without like, if you know SQL, and if someone comes to you and says, can you please make sure that this update process or procedure, whatever would sit here, also does something else to this, or also deletes another table, or also does something else. So you guys already know what we would do here. So it's about adding a code. So it's just a PLC code. So if someone says delete from a table, I can just go, I'm gonna put it in the comment, but I will go delete from a table, I don't know, let's X, Y, Z, it doesn't matter, and say where, and blah, blah, blah. So you already know this code. And it's not that hard, is it? And similarly, okay, so if we were to create a page, so you'll see what it takes to create a page in Apex. So let's do a quick form on report. So you have a wizard. I'm not doing anything special. So it's just a report. Let's say that one. We're gonna give it a name, demo form. That's gonna be report. Okay, form is gonna be demo form. Perfect. And you'll see here. So it's all about declare this. So we're going to add it to the menu just so I can select it afterwards. I'm going to pick any source. We're probably going to stick to the emp and dep table. So I can say emp. If you're going to find emp, hoping I have emp. There you go. I know I have emp. So I go next. Okay, that's going to be my primary key. Perfect. I say, okay, it doesn't matter, create. So you see how you don't need any skill or any knowledge about it. You know, with the wizards, if you follow it, it's pretty much driving you through the whole process. And now if I run this page, so I didn't change anything, and you can see here, if I click on it, it's so my source of this region is just simply a database table. I can change it to be a query. So if I change it to a query, you can see here it's just a query. So you guys know these things. So you know the queries. If someone tells you change or write a query, that's easy for you guys, right? So I'm going to save this and run the page. What we get is just a page, and I can click on it and I'll get the form about that record. How easy was that, right? And pretty much once you get into it, you'll see there's so many things you already know. There's very little you have to learn. And that little is going to be so interesting for you guys. Dave, if you want to take over for the marketing one.
Thanks, Lino. Yeah, just a quick couple of seconds to remind everyone here that SkillBuilders is not only a training organization, but we offer Oracle Apex application development services. So many in the past have worked with Tyson or Gary and Lino, news coming on that front. But keep us in mind, if you have application development that we can assist your team with, or if you'd like to outsource the project entirely, we may be able to help with that as well, design and development. So just keep us in mind. Thank you very much. Back to you, Lino.
All good. Thanks, Dave. We're trying to keep that sweet and short, right? All good, guys. So we're going now a little bit deeper into topic of Apex, right? So we're going to be looking under the hood. So I told you about the universal team. So what is the universal team? So by running my app, you've seen that we mentioned the low code before. Low code means with the least amount of changes or coding, we want to get something out. So we created something on top of the emp table, right? And you notice that I didn't touch on how this page looks like, or how it's gonna, or what colors I'm gonna have, or how my buttons are gonna look like. It was all predefined, and pretty much this template, or the way it looks and feel in Apex, that thing is called universal theme. Okay, you can customize it, and then it doesn't necessarily need to be a universal theme, but in 99.9%, you're gonna be looking at a universal theme. So great thing, and one more URL to remember, apex.oracle.com/UT. It's going to take you to a website That's pretty much a universal team demo website, or like a online library or online help thing, or there's so many things you can find here. And even for us, like more experienced developers, pretty much we come here on a daily basis because there's lots of goodies here to sort of inspect and check and stuff like that. So universal theme is pretty much just a template how your app is going to look like. We have a way to customize the themes and stuff like that, but we're going to be touching on that in a second. So universal theme, simple as that. You just visit apexoracle.com. You can inspect as I recommend components and probably reference links there. It looks a little bit different. This is outdated picture, but anyway, explore it and see what it does. So you're going to get the feeling of the components using Apex. Once you get digging in and working with it, you'll notice that there's lots of built-in classes. There's lots of things that are already within Apex, right? And just by learning some of these, where to find it and how to find it, you reduce the amount of things you have to learn and custom code or code by yourself or find on Google or wherever, right? There's many things, and on the same link that I just showed you, Apex Oracle.com UT, all of these things are there. So you just have to a little bit explore. As I mentioned, you can find all of these components. So Apex comes with the components or the features. Some of them are like the most recent one, the map region or the float, the faceted search, or a cards region. So I think that should be the card region, or the smart filter, that's a new region, and the faceted search with map support, right? So all of these you can do declaratively, same way I built my page and my report, the same way you can build maps, or you can do like Airbnb search, look like, or that type of search as well. It's all built in within Apex. Okay, so let's say I convinced you that you said, okay, fine, look, I'll give it a go, right? So first thing you need is the environment. What does that mean? So you need access to a workspace. So you need somewhere where Apex is going to be installed. So is it on your local premise instance where you go to your DBAs and you say, knock, knock, I need a Apex instance, and they look at you weirdly and say, probably have that already, right? You just get an account, you go in. The most obvious, the most easier for people who don't have that luck, that they can just use internal resources, you go to apexoracle.com. And if we briefly hop on that, because that's an important page, so I'm just gonna type it over this one. Perfect. So on top of there, there's a sign in. So that's if you already have an account, or you can just go here and say get started for free. There's many ways, and pretty much you just sign up for free, or you can request a free workspace, and pretty much you fill in this form, and within 10 or let's say 5 to 10 hours, you're gonna get your credentials on your email. You get a link, you log in, and pretty much you are ready to code in Apex. Easy as that, right? Going back to my slides. So that's one way how you can provision or get to the Apex environment. It doesn't cost you anything. There's no fees. You don't have to leave a credit card or anything like that, and you can have it as long as you want. I have mine probably for 12 years now or something similar to that. A very long time. And the only note there is like within 3 months you're gonna start. If you don't use it, Oracle is gonna delete it. First they're gonna warn you. If you still don't react, all you have to do is log in. So your activity is keeping it alive, right? The other option and sort of Oracle most popular way is that you sign up for a free tier account. So there's Oracle Cloud or Apex Forever free instance or service that you can sign up for. Same way, pretty much it doesn't cost you anything, and you can still get your Apex running there. It's a little bit more complicated for the beginners, so I would probably recommend Apex Oracle at this stage. And then for people who are more experienced, there's virtual machines or Docker or Vagrant versions that you can download from the community, or as I said before, just come to your database or come to your project managers or your bosses and just say, look, I would like to try it. Do we have an environment locally, right? So as I said, there's nothing rogue. You request, so that's an example of apex.oracle.com. So you get access to an environment. Perfect. So where do I start next? Where do I go next? There's gazillions of tutorials, right? There's on ApexOracle.com, that's pretty much the landing page for everything you want. And then, of course, you can't miss Apex office hours. If I go back to my browser, so everything starts with ApexOracle.com, and then you say Apex office hours. Oh no, just office hours. Perfect. There you go. And then it takes you to this page. So ApexOracle.com/office hours. It takes you to the page. This is a page where Apex team, so team within Oracle, the best of the best, right? They host the webinars free of charge, and you can access all of the recordings. There's like currently 64, probably, let's say at least 40 something already made recordings for us. And if you want to learn, pretty much this is a great way to start. Other than that, as we said, you can always participate in webinars like SkillBuilders ones that we do, or training sessions that we do, or any other sort of. And the other one is the packaged apps. So Apex comes with something that's called sample apps and packaged apps. Pretty much you can download and install apps where you can see, similar to what I've done on my end. So this demo that I've done. So if I go to the home page, all of this was built by Oracle Apex team. So if I was to learn and sniff around a little bit, all of these options and stuff that are here, all I have to do is just learn how to use these things. So there's a quick edit. I just click on a region and I can hop directly into it and start looking what's beneath and how things work. So I can see the code. As you can imagine, you can already recognize this. These are just queries, and you can, all these functions, and these are just some Apex APIs that you're gonna learn as you go along. But pretty much all things you're gonna encounter underneath the hood are just SQL and PSQL, right? Yet again, we come to that. Right? Other than that, there's conferences or meetups and Oracle days that you can join in. So I highly encourage you to do that, right? As I said, just visit SkillBuilders website. There's plenty of training we offer, so you can join us anytime or just start learning with that option as well. Once you get into the code, these are always helpful links. ApexOracle.com, I probably typed it already 5 times during my presentation. The other ones that I want to mention is like ApexOracle.com doc, and then there's a version. So if I was to go back, just open my ApexOracle.com, and then I say version, and I say, I don't know, 21.1. And what did I mistyped? Doc, sorry. Oh, doc, and then I don't need a version, of course. There you go. And it takes me directly to the latest. So as you code, you consult for different clients. They have different versions of the Apex, right? So you want to come in and you don't want to remember what's the link for 21.2 or what's the link for the other one. Pretty much that gives you a quick overview of the short, so doc, and then you just put a number in there, as I did 21.1, for example. ApexOracle API, so that's it's going to list all the APIs currently available in latest version of Apex. Same way, JavaScript APIs, you can just list them by ApexOracle.com and just find the latest versions of them. Many of these links are going to be helpful for you as you go along, so just check them out. I mentioned Oracle Apex office hours, that you can't go wrong with them, and you learn heaps by it, just joining them. Other links that I can mention, pretty much there's one, and I'll copy it, or Oracle. If I double click, it should take me directly to it. Not that one. No, that one. Thank you very much. So I'm going to say Oracle GitHub. There you go. So what's the difference between versions, the Apex 21.1 and previous versions, and 21.2 also has this. Sample apps are not part of apps anymore. So if I go to any of my page designers, you'll see here that there's no sample apps anymore. So if I click here, what normally would happen and what I would have here is I would be able to install the apps. But if I click any of these sample apps, it takes me to the external page and it takes me to exactly the same spot where I was. It takes me to a place where I can download stuff from a GitHub. So I'm going to do sample maps, for example. So it's going to take me to Oracle GitHub. So these are the same old sample apps, just maintained and updated just in the GitHub. And pretty much you find what you want, which is just a file. So for people new to Apex, when you work with Apex and you finish developing your apps, so let me take one of them, any, that one is good enough. If I want to deploy it to the other, there's again a wizard that I can follow. I can just say simply export, and what I get at the end is nothing but a SQL file. And just for the fun of it, I'll open this one if I can see it here. I don't know if that's going to be smart enough. Yeah, you can see here it's just a standard SQL file with some functions and calls and PL SQL stuff that we are all used to. I mean, you never have to read this. I was just here to showcase how the export, what you actually get when you want to deploy an Apex app. So it's just a SQL file. Perfect. So we've seen Oracle GitHub. I have to probably update that link. Most common questions. So before I go into questions that I normally get asked, how often do you meet the team that develops the tool in Oracle? So these are the guys. This was a picture for 2019. I have the latest one in 2021. Unfortunately, some of them passed away from COVID, and some of them joined in. So the team is growing. And just last night, or which was like your afternoon in Eastern Standard Time, Mike Suits from Oracle Apex team said that Oracle is looking for Apex developers. So I'm telling you, if you visit a SkillBuilders website, we are looking for developers, right? So it's not that I just sort of made that up. Really, it's in high demand. Something that I find more fun than anything. So we don't say Apex, even though it's more native to, like, I was born in Croatia, right? So normally natively in Croatian, I would say Apex, because that's just the way how Croatian is. And there's many other countries and many other languages where we would say the same. And officially, it should be say Apex. And there's discussions on it going forever, right? It's also not lowercase or anything. It needs to be written uppercase. So Apex, always uppercase. All good. Next one. So this is the first question that comes to my mind. Or they always ask you, can Apex work offline? And there is some news. So to be honest, so any version before 21.2, honest answer is no. So Apex is not meant to work offline. What does that mean? And most people, when they ask you, is it working offline, they mean by, can you install it from iOS or Android shop and pretty much install it on your mobile as a native mobile app? Yes, you can do it. Some people have done it, but is it that easy? Answer is no. And would I recommend you exploring that part straight up? Probably not. But is it doable? Yes. But I have some updates here. So for the people who are more experienced, I have here an Apex Oracle.com. I'm just refreshing, of course, because I know I'm going to be logged out. Perfect. So I'm going to be sharing in a chat. Tyson, you can just make sure that I paste it in a right pot. One sec. I have a URL, and I'm in Kanji. So there's a URL, and there's username and password in there. And if you want to participate in this fun thing, this is a demo app that I've built for demoing the features of 21.2. And because we're talking about PWA, progressive web apps, and does Apex work offline? Pretty much no, but we are getting closer to making it look and feel as a native mobile app. So if you log in, so I can log in, and I just need to be using Chrome. So I'm going to copy this. Sorry, I'm going to copy this. You open a Chrome, so it doesn't work. So the point is, once you log in, this is a home page, same for everyone. There's a top right corner says install app. And in 21.2, that's a new feature. So if I go to edit this application, just by the fun of it, under application attributes. There is something now called, there's a whole section, there's quite a few new sections here, but there is a progressive app section. By default, when we create new apps in 21.2, this is enabled by default, so that switch is on. But the second one, which it says installable, is off. So normally it would look like this if you would just create a new app. So I came in and I clicked that installable to true, or just switched it on, and I said apply changes, and then all of a sudden I got that on top of my app. So if I open another screen, so if I open my Chrome, so if I log in using the same demo 1, 2, 3, I think that was perfect. And if you press this, okay, so it says I can't install, which is fine. It's just because I have done it already. So I'm going down. I'm going out for a sec out of this. So if I take you all the way back, you'll see on my desktop here I have two apps. So one was a demo from Mark, so I can pretty much dump that, but this is mine. So if I double click on mine, and if you do install, if you click that install, you're going to get the same. It should work on the mobile phones, tablets, your Mac, iOS as well, and Chrome on Windows as well. Firefox for some reason doesn't let this happen, but anyway. So if I double click, you'll notice what happens. Apex is going to launch. It's going to ask me the same username and password, and then you'll see a big difference. What's the top line? Well, what's missing here on the top line compared to my normal browser? So if I bring my Firefox and then we put it one next to each other, you see how this right-hand one is more looking like a native mobile app. There's no that URL bar at the top, right? And the buttons and these things are a little bit more consolidated, right? So pretty much going back to my presentation, one sec, have to find the slide because I just got out. One sec, bear with me. Perfect. So before Apex 21.2, this was not so easy. So there were some examples by Vincent Moreau who sort of show how PWA works and how it should be done in Apex. And luckily he joined the Apex team, and then pretty much we got that built in. So isn't that cool, right? And I think this would be one of the most favorite features of Apex 21.2 because people have been waiting for this for a long time. With that said, I won't waste any of the time because we had like 10 minutes to go. So moving forward, version control. It's been a very unpleasant spot of Apex, right? Because people are expecting it to be handled nicely and integrated with all of these versions controls softwares that we have, and pretty much it can, but it's not as people expect it. What that means is it's nothing but there's a way how you work with Apex, there's a way how you can work with the page, and if there's many developers, there's a procedures and stuff that we can follow, and pretty much you can do backups, you get export files as you see like SQL, so you can create your nightly jobs to export your Apex, and pretty much nowadays Apex support the zip exports and imports, right? And now I'm going to be showing you, just because I know there's people who want to hear this, I'm just going to expand this. So on Apex 21.2, there's some new things that came along that I want to just showcase where I think Apex team is taking us. So under utilities, so it's just, I'm under my application builder utilities. There's a thing now called application checksum and page checksum. So you always ask yourself, is my app on test same as in dev, or is it same as in production, or is my page in one environment equal to the other one, or is it same from the other app as well? So just for the sake of demoing, I'm going to open the page checksum, and pretty much this is a small app, just a dummy one, and I see here I have a home page, and then I have a home page checksum. And if I was to have this app on any other environment, and if the checksum was exactly the same, that would mean that the pages are the same. If I had a wrong or different checksum, meaning something has changed or the pages are different. Same way for the applications. That's one thing. And the other one thing that I wanted to show perfect is under application. Again, there's supporting objects. There's a new thing here now, which is create data package. So you know that we could use these supporting objects to transfer objects from one database into the other database with our application and stuff. And now we have something that's called a data packager or data package. So pretty much this allows us to pick through the tables that we want and include the data as well. So we want to not transfer just the DML, but we also want all the data to come with us. And then that all can be part of your export within Apex, right? So these are just two things that add a little bit to this management of version control and stuff. And I think these checksum might be a hint where Apex team might be taking us in terms of this version controlling and matching and diff and merge things like features that we normally use in projects, right? For like version control, right? Next thing, or pretty much common, is like how does Apex do printing? Well, with newer version like 21 or 20 and 21, there's been lots of improvements on declaratives, also built-in options within Apex, but most realistically, you're going to be ending using one of these tools, like AOP stands for Apex Office Print, PR Publisher, and Jasper Reporting, right? If you need any more details, we we're like specializing in this area. So please, if you have any questions on Pretty, just let us know, and the team will be happy to help you. And the last tip before I close down, because we have 5 minutes to go. I know we all used to like using Toad or SQL developer or PL SQL developer, and pretty much building the data models there and then having that exported as a file, which I think is still there and still needs to be used. But if I quickly need to build something and Tyson comes to me and saying I need a table with data and stuff, check out something that's called Quick SQL, and it's going to save you tons of your time, right? And that's why I personally love it, and I think everyone should be using it. Where you find your PL SQL, so you log in into Apex, you go under SQL Workshop, and then you have Quick SQL here hiding under Utilities. Of course, same as other stuff in Apex, there's you can load the model. So I'm just gonna, in our case, I'm just gonna load the model to showcase something. And pretty much with these 4, like I don't say 5 lines or 12 lines of code, it generates my tables and the structure that I can start playing with. So these on the left generated all of these on the right, and there's additional thing that I can configure. There's a setting here, there's tons of things I can configure to add more things to it, and pretty much all you see here, everything you see here is just generated by these 12 lines of code. So what this will do is create my tables, put the triggers on, put the index on, insert some dummy data inside, all sorts of things that normally I would spend hours of building just to sort of come to an idea. And I come here, I just draw something, and for demoing to your clients or for demoing something for your teams, very useful. Quick SQL, right? So don't forget about it. And with that said, I think I am at the end. My summary here is I'm hoping that this session at least sparked a little interest in Apex. Not just because we have like jobs is booming and we are in demand and stuff like that, but because it's so damn interesting. And I know you guys want to try that. There's so many of you guys, SQL developers and PL SQL developers, who would love to try but don't get a chance. Start by yourself, get an environment, or join us for SkillBuilders classes, and pretty much the future in front of you is just you open the door to completely other future that's ahead of you. I would just finish with that. I would add Apex as jobs of the future, or I would add it to that list, not just a data scientist, but I think Apex as a future, or Apex developers for the future. Yeah, I can't give you more recommendation than that.
If you liked this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel.